Okay, so I'm going to be talking about the adaptive immune system or the adaptive defense. It comes right after the innate defense immune system. The innate one, if you watch my other video, it's the non-specific. Adaptive is specific. Okay, there's three things right off the bat that you need to remember. It's specific, specific, systemic, and probably the most important, it has memory. Okay? There we go. Okay, so after that, it also has T cells, which are cellular immunity and cell mediated. And then we have B cells also, which is humoral immunity and antibody mediated. Now these two right here are lymphocytes. Lymphocytes. Okay? T cells and B cells are lymphocytes. The next one is going to be antigen. An antigen is basically anything that provokes immune response. Okay? So adaptive immune system, it's specific, systemic, and it has memory, which is basically what you really need to remember. Okay, T cells and B cells, which are cellular immunity, cell mediated, and humoral immunity and antibody mediated. They're both lymphocytes. Antigen is anything that provokes the immune response. Okay, so a more specific antigen is antigen presenting cells. They engulf antigens. They also present fragments of antigens to be recognized by T cells. Okay, now APCs are broken down into two major types, okay? So the two major types are dendritic cells and macrophages. Did I spell phages wrong? I did. Macrophages. Okay. So, zooming out, adaptive immune system, antigen presenting cells, APCs, engulf antigens, present fragments of antigens to be recognized by the T cells. Two major types of antigen-presenting cells are dendritic cells in connective tissues and epidermis, macrophages, which are in connective tissues and lymphoid organs. They mostly remained fixed in the lymphoid organs. Dendritic cells are internalized pathogens and enter lymphatic to present the antigen to T cells in lymphoid organs. Alright, and they both are activate T cells, release chemicals that produce macrophages to become incitable phagocytes and to secrete bacterial chemicals. Okay, so the next is maturation. We're going to talk about immunocompetence, which is they are able to recognize and bind to a specific antigen. Now, when I'm talking about I'm talking about lymphocytes, okay? Maturation of the lymphocytes. Immunocompetence is they are able to recognize and bind to a specific antigen. Next one is self-tolerance. Self-tolerance is unresponsive to self-antigens. So they don't attack the host, okay? So they don't become autoimmune. So they need self-tolerance because they cannot become autoimmune, okay? They don't attack the host to become autoimmune. Now, both lymphocytes need to develop immunocompetence and self-tolerance to mature, alright? Now, T cells originate from the red bone marrow. However, they mature in the thymus. Okay? So T cells mature in the red bone marrow, but they originate from the red bone marrow, but they mature in the thymus. B cells originate and mature in the red bone marrow. Okay? Okay, so as you recall earlier, lymphocytes, they need to reach immunocompetence and self-tolerance in order to mature. Once mature, they are called naive, unexposed B and T cells, which are exported to lymph nodes, spleen, and other lymphoid organs. Okay, and they stay naive immunocompetence B lymphocytes. Okay, I'm going to talk about the B cells now. Naive immunocompetent B lymphocytes, they stay naive until stimulated by an antigen. Okay, so once they are stimulated with an antigen, so B cell activation. Okay, that means that it got an antigen. Okay, it got an antigen. Okay, and then now it's going to clone itself. B cell clones, okay, with, main word, with the specific antigen. Okay, so B cell activation means it has an antigen. B cell clones with specific antigen, okay? Once it clones, it becomes B plasma or B memory. Okay, now this is the secondary immune response. Primary immune response. Again, B cell activation. Okay, let me write naive up here, okay? Naive immunocompetent competent B. Okay, so once it reaches these two right here, it has matured, right? And it is now called naive immunocompetent. And I'm just talking about the B cells right now. And it'll stay naive immunocompetent B until it is stimulated by an antigen, and then it becomes active. And then it clones with the specific antigen to become either the primary immune response, which is the B plasma, or the secondary immune response, which is B memory cells. Alright, now this is the memory one. So memory is reserved and mount and mediator response to future exposures of the same antigen. Antibody levels peak in 2 to 3 days at higher levels and bind with greater affinity, which can last weeks or months, okay? Plasma, B plasma, the primary immune response here, produces antibodies, which is 4 to 5 days, and it peaks at 10 days. Okay, and it circulates in the blood or the lymph. It binds to free antigens, and it marks the antigens for destruction. Okay, so if you recall earlier, I said that B cells are also humoral immunity. Okay, or antibody mediated. Humoral immunity is broken down into 2 categories. Okay, well, categories. We have the active, which is the host makes its own. Okay, so the host makes its own for active. Let's say it's like vaccines. Vaccine's a good example. Vaccine. Okay, so vaccines basically spare us the symptoms of the first response and provide antigenic determinants that are immunogenic and reactive, and it target only one type of helper T cells. Next one is passive humoral, okay, which is B cells. Okay, so this is T cells up here. T cells. Let me just write T cells. And these are B cells. Okay, and passive is B cells are not challenged by antigens, which equals no memory. Okay, so no memory occurs. Okay, so memory. None. So there is no memory, okay, because they are not challenged by antigens. So there's no memory that occurs. There's 2 types, okay. I'm going to do 2 types. We have naturally acquired, okay, and we have artificially. Naturally is like naturally acquired. Antibodies are delivered to a fetus via the placenta or infant through breast milk. Okay, the host makes its own basically for naturally. Artificially acquired is injection of serum, such as gamma globin. Production is immediate but ends when antibodies naturally degrade in the body. Okay. So again, the adaptive immune system, humoral immunity, which is the B cells. Okay, we have active and passive. Active is host makes its own vaccines. They spare us the symptoms of the primary response, provide antigenic determinant that are immunogenic and reactive, target only one type of T cells. Passive are the B cells are not challenged by antigens, which there's no memory that occurs then. There's 2 types, naturally and artificially. Naturally acquired antibodies delivered to the fetus via the placenta or infant through milk. The host also makes its own for naturally. Artificially, injection of serum such as gamma globin. Protection is immediate but ends when antibodies naturally degrade in the body.